30,000 years ago, a group of people knelt around the body of someone they loved. They did not simply cover it with earth. First, they reached for a pot of brilliant red powder and carefully, tenderly, painted the entire body from head to toe in a deep blood red. Then they filled the grave with treasures. Thousands of tiny beads, each one carved by hand over untold hours. And more of that precious red powder poured over everything. This was not a quick, fearful burial. It was a masterpiece of love, and it happened again and again all across the ancient world. So today's question reaches right into the oldest feelings we have. Why did ancient humans bury their dead in red paint? Was it decoration? Was it fear? Or is that red powder the very first proof that human beings refused to believe death was the end? To answer it, we need a rock that stained the whole Stone Age red, the most stunning grave ever found, a body so painted it fooled the experts, and a truth about grief that has not changed in 50,000 years. Let's open the file. First, what exactly was this red paint? It was ochre, a soft, iron-rich rock found in the earth all over the world that crumbles into a rich red powder when you grind it. To ancient humans, it was one of the most important materials on Earth, and they were obsessed with it. At a site called Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found a whole ochre workshop with tools for grinding and mixing the powder. It was around 100,000 years old. Making red ochre may be one of the oldest crafts our species has. And ochre was not only for the dead. The living used it constantly. They painted it on their skin for decoration and for ritual. They rubbed it into animal hides to preserve them. They mixed it into glue to fix stone blades onto spears. Some may even have used it on their skin as a kind of sunscreen and insect repellent. But here's a clue that its meaning ran far deeper than any of that. Ochre was not only used by us. Long before our species spread across the world, the Neanderthals were collecting and using red and black pigments too. The pull of this bright red earth may be older than modern humanity itself. And at Blombos, they found something even more haunting. A piece of ochre with a careful pattern of crisscrossing lines deliberately scratched into it. Not a tool, a design. It may be one of the oldest pieces of symbolic art ever discovered, a message from a mind exactly like yours. But to see the true power of red ochre, we travel to Russia, to a 34,000-year-old site called Sunghir. Here lies one of the most spectacular burials in all of human history, and it will completely change how you picture the people of the Ice Age. In one grave lay an older man, and in another, two children laid down head to head, and they were not buried poor. Each body was covered in thousands upon thousands of beads, carved from mammoth-ivory. Experts think each single grave took years of work to prepare. And through all of it ran the red. The bodies were laid on a bed of red ochre. It was sprinkled over them like a blanket. In one grave, they even found a human thigh bone, hollowed out and packed solid with the brilliant red powder. Whatever this red meant, it mattered more than almost anything. And the grave held even more wonders. Beside the children lay long, straight spears, carved from mammoth tusks that had somehow been made perfectly straight, a technique we still do not fully understand. There were carved ivory animals, pierced fox teeth, and delicate ornaments. These children were sent into death like royalty. Just imagine the effort. A community, surviving the brutal cold of the Ice Age, chose to spend years of precious time carving tens of thousands of beads and gathering all that red ochre, purely to honor their dead. In the middle of a desperate fight for survival, they poured everything into a funeral. The red was so striking that it once fooled the experts completely. In Wales, in 1823, a skeleton was discovered, stained deep red with ochre and buried with ornaments. Scholars of the day were certain it was a woman and named it the Red Lady of Paviland. They were wrong on nearly every count. The Red Lady was actually a young man. and the burial was not a few thousand years old, but around 33,000. It is one of the oldest known ceremonial burials in Western Europe. And once again, its defining feature was that deep coat of red. And this was not one strange local habit. Red ochre burials show up across the entire planet. In Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in Australia, in the Americas, peoples who could never possibly have met, separated by whole oceans, all reach for the same red earth to send off their dead. So we know they did it over and over for tens of thousands of years. The real mystery is why. Why cover the dead in red of all colors? And the leading answer is as simple as it is beautiful. Because red is the color of blood, and blood is the color of life. Think about what these people saw. A living body is warm and flushed and red with blood. A dead one turns cold and pale and gray. So to give the dead back their color, to paint them red again, may have been a way of giving them back their life, of warming them for a journey. And that points to the most profound idea of all. You do not prepare someone for a journey unless you believe they're going somewhere. The red ochre may be our very first evidence that humans believed in an afterlife. That death was not an ending, but a door. And the burials back this up in another way. The dead were so often sent off with things. Tools, weapons, food, ornaments. You do not pack a bag for someone who is simply gone. You pack it for someone who is going somewhere, and who will need what you give them when they arrive. There is a darker theory, too, and it may hold a piece of the truth. Some researchers think the red was not only for love, but also for protection. Red, the color of blood and danger, painted onto the dead to keep them in their grave, to stop the dead from rising and coming back to trouble the living. Love or fear, or most likely a tangle of both. Either way, the conclusion is the same, and it is staggering. These people were not empty brutes, just surviving from one meal to the next. They were thinking deeply about death and the soul and what might lie beyond. And notice this. Not everyone got the red treatment. These lavish, ochre-soaked burials were rare, save for certain special people. That tells us these communities had beliefs and status and ceremony. They had a whole inner world of meaning 30,000 years before the first written word. And this is where that ancient red powder reaches across 30,000 years and touches you directly. Because it is so tempting to see these people as utterly alien. Primitive cave dwellers, smearing paint on the dead. But look closer at what they were actually doing. They lost someone they loved. They could not bear for it to be the end. So they gathered together and gave that person beauty and color and treasure. They performed a ceremony to say this life mattered, and it is not truly over. Now ask yourself, what do? We dress our dead in their finest clothes. We lay them in beautiful boxes. We cover the grave in bright flowers. We gather in special buildings, wear special colors, and hold a ceremony to say this life mattered, and it is not truly over. We're doing the exact same thing. We are still painting our dead in red. So the real question was never why ancient humans buried their dead in red. They did it for the same reason you would place a flower on a grave. Love, grief, and the deep, unshakable human hope that the people we lose are not gone forever, but simply somewhere we cannot yet follow. That red powder is 30,000 years old, but the feeling behind it is older than any of us, and as fresh as this morning's tears. It is the first and maybe the most human thing we ever did. Refuse to let go, and paint our love in the brightest color we could find, all over the ones we could not keep. And tomorrow, those ancient humans leave us one more message, pressed onto a cave wall in that same red paint. Not a picture of an animal, but something far more personal. A human hand. Why did ancient humans paint their hands on cave walls? Subscribe and find out tomorrow. And tomorrow, those ancient humans leave us one more message, pressed onto a cave wall in that same red paint. Not a picture of an animal, but something far more personal. A human hand. Why did ancient humans paint their hands on cave walls? Subscribe and find out tomorrow.